I'm going to talk about some of the most common errors that beginners make. As you can see, this piece of knitting is a bit of a mess. We have a hole here. We started with 10 stitches and now we have 13 or so. There's another smaller hole here. There are different sizes or numbers of ridges. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ridges on this side, but 7 on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So how did I do all of these things? Well, the first way is to do what I talked about in the beginning knitting video, which is to knit into the cuff of the stitch rather than into the stitch itself. And if you do that, oops, you end up with 2 stitches rather than 1. And you get kind of a stretchy looking thing here, which is what I did there. The second way to gain extra stitches is to do a yarn over. To do that, all you do is pull the yarn forward as if you're going to purl, but then knit. This is great for lace, but not so great for a garter stitch scarf. And I'll keep going across the row now. You can see the hole and the extra stitch here. The extra stitch is also crooked across your needle, whereas the others are straight, so that's the other way you can tell what it is. And you can also split your yarn. So you can go into halfway. This comes from not looking very carefully as you knit. Or some yarns like cottons and acrylics tend to be a little splittier, so you may want to start out working with wool on your first project. And that gave me 2 stitches where there once was 1. The other thing I did was what's called a short row, and that created this tiny little hole down here. I went part way across and then I put down the work because I got a phone call or something, turned back, and when I picked it up again, instead of having the working yarn on the right needle, I have it on the left needle. But I can still knit that way. But that creates an extra row, but only on one side. So you end up with sort of a sloping hill in your stitches. Now the question is, what do you do about all of this stuff? You can decide that it's a piece of artwork and that you want to leave it. That's a fine option. You can do sneaky knit 2 togethers where there once was 2 stitches, you can make 1 stitch. And to do that, you just go into the 2 stitches as if they're 1, like this, and knit them together. The other option is to take out. Now if I do that, I usually like to try to go back 1 stitch at a time, but that's not always so possible, especially with pretty many mistakes. If I do go back 1 stitch at a time, I go into the cuff of the current stitch. The cuff is what is holding that stitch at the base. So I go in this way and I take the stitch off. You can see that the right leg of the stitch is on the front of the needle. That's what I want. That's going to be true on both sides. So I'm going into the cuff this way, taking it off. If I go into the cuff this way, the right leg is now in the back. I also split it here. If I do that, I just need to fix it. So now the right leg is in the front. That's a pretty slow way of fixing. So what I'm going to do, I need to get back to where the rows looked good. So I'm going to just take everything off my needles. This is not as scary as it looks. Those stitches are not moving. I don't have slippery yarn here. If you have very slippery yarn, it might not be the best idea. So I'm going to take it back to where things started looking good again. And that's about right here. I'm going to turn it, put it back on my needles. Again, the right side of the stitch is going in. If you can't get it on this way, just get it on this way and fix it later. And I like to pop them off at this point 1 at a time. And there you go. Now we're all back to where